familiar with that storyline, where you relive the same day over and over and over again? I don't know about you, but for the last 3 years, I've been amazed at how all the journalists every day can find something new to say about Brexit and our relationship with Europe. And why am I here talking to you? Well, as I say, I help people invest in Europe. And it's one of the issues and challenges that I come up against on a daily basis with my business, investors saying, well, I can't invest because there's an election coming up or Brexit or whatever. So it's an issue I face on a daily basis, as I am sure that you too face. And like you, I am also a landlord. I have investment property here in the UK and also in Poland. So I have a foot in both sides of the camps, and I can compare and contrast those two different markets. Just to get a show of hands so I know the makeup of the audience, can I ask how many of you derive your main income, or you are in property full-time as a landlord or a property investor, and that is your main source of income? Can you just put their hands up? So just 2 or 3 of you. And by default, another person back there for, by default, does that mean the rest of you are investing in property on a part-time basis or alongside your day jobs? Yeah? No? Yes, yes. Is there a category I've missed? Because yeah, so that captures both of us. And just from a European perspective, because we're here in Greater London, how many of you have ever invested or are currently invested in an investment property or a holiday home in continental Europe? 1. Which country, may I ask, is that in? Okay, great. Okay, so we've got a little bit of an international dimension here in terms of moving forwards with Europe. So that's great. Thanks very much. So if we go on to the next slide. So for the next half an hour, I'm going to go through what I see as the context of what's happening with the UK and Europe, to set the scene for what I see as the UK landscape at the moment, and how it's being affected by this ongoing saga with will we, won't we with Europe, and to also set the scene about property investment and being a landlord in the UK. I then want to just allude to 3 broad brush potential strategies. Now, you may have already adopted a strategy or started doing things a bit differently for you to move forwards, but I've got some thoughts up there about what you may already have done and what you might else be doing. I want to draw some conclusions, and then I'll give a little bit more about me at the end. For anybody who wants to stay in contact, I've got some contact details and things at the end there, if anybody wants to carry on the conversation. Thanks, Karen. I put this slide in as a bit of a humorous one, Brexit. No matter how you pronounce it, whether it's phonetically or in a different language, it throws up all sorts of horrors for investors and landlords. And why is that? Well, there's been this endless uncertainty and turmoil, and there's been absolutely no clarity for anybody involved. And Karen might be able to correct me, but there was some research done, you may well have taken part, in 2016 among landlords, asking what their thoughts were on Brexit, and over a third of them said that they felt that Brexit was going to hamper their ability to let out the properties efficiently and cause problems in rentals. I don't know whether there's been any more updated research since 2016, but then the situation hasn't changed too much, so I'm not so sure that the figures would have changed much. So just, if anyone wants to shout out, what are your thoughts on Brexit and how it's affecting your business? Does anybody want to give their perspective? Yes, gentleman over there.
European tenants, so what happens with terms of, do they stay afterwards, they have to use, or my consideration of having to use into my property?
Okay. So it is worrying about voids and European tenants and what they're doing. Anybody else got a perspective? Karen does.
I have a property that I've rented out for about 3 years now to a family from North Macedonia, and they have decided that they need to leave. They don't feel comfortable here, they're not sure what's going to happen, they're concerned about whether they'll continue to be able to get work.
Yeah.
So they're going, and it is an impact, not just Brexit, but Brexit is definitely having
an effect.
Part to play.
Yeah, and it's definitely a valid concern, because there are about 2 million Europeans who have been renting in the private rented sector and they make up a substantial portion of the private rental sector, so it's a valid concern. Some people might see it as a big threat, some people might see it as an opportunity. But, you know, I think that we can all get very caught up in this whole scenario of, you know, it's a threat to our business. In the UK, things are all bad. But, you know, I think we can get a bit too absorbed sometimes with that. There are other countries in Europe that are also facing big challenges. I know that it's a pretty big challenge. But if you look at other countries in Europe, Spain, for example, is facing challenges. It's just had its 4th election in 4 years. It doesn't have a particularly stable political setup at the minute. In fact, there have been some pundits who have suggested that the Spanish Parliament is looking a bit like the Italian Parliament, but without the Italian politicians at the moment. And if you're following the news in Europe, you'll know that there's unrest over independence in Catalonia. So they have their own problems facing there, you know, the challenging times in Barcelona. There have been lots of unrest. If you look at France, with what Macron's trying to do, he's trying to bring in a very reformist programme. The finances in France are not in a great state. Just to give an example, I mean, I don't know whether you've heard on the news today, they're starting a winter of unrest. There have been demonstrations, and in particular over his pensions reforms. He's trying to rationalise the public sector pensions. There are over 40 public sector pensions in France, and they're all on different retirement dates, different benefits. He's trying to rationalise that so that it costs less for the state. And France spends double the amount that the UK does on public sector pensions. So France has its own problems to deal with. Germany too, the stalwart of Europe, the big economic powerhouse, it's bumping along the edge of will it or won't it go into recession. It's been very hard hit by the fallout of the China-US trade war. It's got a big manufacturing base, particularly its car manufacturing, and so it's being affected by that as well. So I think it's important to know that, you know, we're all facing similar challenges, and also, you know, other countries in Europe are facing big challenges in themselves. It's not just the UK that's on its own and caught up completely just with what we're fighting with Brexit. So if I can go to the next slide. So the context. Are we heading over a cliff? We just got. So just a quick run through of where we are at the minute and how our economy and the whole climate is being affected by this situation. We've got the disruption of a general election. As you said, we weren't expecting that, so that's going to be next week. Well, we see a major exit of high net worth wealth for fear of a Labour government getting in. That's not even to mention differing housing policies, although both parties have committed to building a lot more houses. They're not always successful in doing that. House price fall, where there are in places, you know, London's suffering an awful lot in central London. There are places that are doing well. Rental demand, I think we've covered that rental demand is affected in some areas, particularly where European citizens are tenants. Inflation, did that go up? Interest rates, which way are they going to go? And the mortgage market, well, you know, the interest rates are very competitive at the minute on mortgages. But I don't know about you, but I've certainly seen or heard of evidence of mortgage lenders being very conservative in their approach to lending, because they too are getting the wobbles about all the uncertainties. They're being very cautious in how they lend. So even though the buy-to-let market is very competitive at the minute with the mortgage interest rates, they are being quite difficult on the lending. Strength of the pound, that's going up and down, particularly if you do have exposure potentially to another country and a property there. And ownership rights in the EU, that might put some people off thinking about investing in Europe. You know, what's the status going to be when we're a third country? Am I still going to have the same ownership rights as I would do in the EU? So there's some of the things and the complexity of the picture in the UK, and then